and we'll just get to a few more questions here, a few more comments. Let's see here. Okay, so Julia says, and this is one of the hard parts because there's so much misinformation sometimes that's passed around. And so Julia says, I've seen in the news today that all you need is a passport for refugees from Ukraine. Is it true? And I think what she means is all you need is to have a passport. You can come to Canada and claim refugee status. So maybe this is a nice segue, Anna, for you to maybe just touch on this whole concept of claiming refugee status in Canada. And we know Canada is one of the world's most generous and open countries when it comes to the intention to receive refugees and that our borders are open. But in practicality, what does that mean for someone? And we deliberately put that in the title because that's one of the questions that is being asked instantly. Can I claim refugee status in Canada if I flee Ukraine and I manage to find myself on Canadian shores? Can I claim refugee status, and what does that mean? And so maybe you could just touch a little bit on that, Anna, as we kind of get to the tail end of our video here.
Yeah, sorry. So, would you like me to touch on making refugee claims inside Canada or outside Canada?
Well, you know what? Let's start inside, okay? Because I think, and then we'll shift to outside. We'll follow the same pattern as the temporary options.
Yeah. So, as much as Canada has this very sort of noble and glorious reputation around the world that we are welcoming refugees and we are just a very compassionate and a very generous society, the Canadian refugee system is very dense with rules, restrictions, definitions, who is a refugee, what persecution means, what state protection is from your home country. So for anybody to receive the status of a refugee, so they must fit within these definitions. And one of the downsides to that is that certain situations in the world, certain types of crisis, turmoil, wars, do not necessarily allow to meet the refugee definition, no matter how difficult, how life-threatening those situations are. And so one such example is enduring of having fled a situation of a civil conflict or a civil war in a country. So just because you as a member of a population in general have been affected and you fled the country, that does not, and let's say you found your way into Canada and you try to make a refugee claim in Canada because there is such a widespread conflict and war happening in your country, even though, of course, there is risk to your life and safety, but that does not fall within the definition of a refugee. And so therefore, a refugee claim cannot be approved. Generally, a refugee under the Canadian legal definition is somebody who is fleeing persecution on one of the enumerated grounds. They're called refugee convention grounds, such as political opinion, ethnicity, religion, membership in a social group, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some category, but they're really kind of compartmentalized, they're defined. So unless a person that made their way from Ukraine into Canada and they can make a connection between the likely persecution, risk to their life, and one of these grounds, so for example, a political dissident, or like a member of the media, a human rights activist who is afraid that they are going to be facing persecution in their country, and the police and other protecting authorities in the country cannot protect them, so then they can succeed. But again, if somebody is just I'm not trying to minimize or trivialize the situation, because it is very tragic and it is really a matter of life and death. But again, just under the confines of our refugee law, you have to make a connection between your circumstance, your fear, the threat to your life and safety, and one of these enumerated grounds. So in theory, it is possible for the Canadian government to issue a public policy to waive this requirement. And there have been precedents in the past where nationals who fled certain countries I can't remember now which nation would have been specifically, but there's a mechanism, there's a legal mechanism for the Canadian government to recognize anybody, let's say, who flees now from Ukraine as de facto refugees. So they don't have to go into the pains of demonstrating how their risk, how their circumstance relates to like a political opinion or religion or membership in a social group. So they left the country. The country is in such a state of turmoil, and everything is turned upside down, and people are literally fearing for their life on every waking hour. So that should be good enough. So they are de facto refugees, and let's recognize them as refugees and let's give them the protection. So that's in my ideal world what the
Hmm.
government should do.
Yeah.
Whether they will do it, whether they will put in place like these legal exemptions and waivers and issue appropriate policies, it remains to be seen.